Do you ever wonder why some cities seem to stay the same for decades and then almost overnight everything starts to change? Because that's exactly the kind of moment Wichita Falls is stepping into right now. And if you own a home or you're thinking about buying one, what's happening this year could have a real impact on your financial future. So I want to walk you through this, not from hype, not from headlines, but from what we're actually seeing and what we already know and what has already happened in a city very similar to ours. Because once you see the full picture, the question isn't if things change, it's whether you position yourself before they do. So what's happening in Wichita Falls? Let's start with what's happening right here at home. I recently attended the Wichita Falls Chamber of Commerce State of the Economy event, a packed room of over 200 community and business leaders, spending the morning learning about what's on the horizon for our city.
Business owners and Wichita Falls officials gathered at the Impact this morning to discuss key pieces of the future of the Wichita Falls economy.
And there was one topic that dominated the conversation, a new project called PowerCampus Texas being built right here by a company called Skybox Data Centers. A lot of questions were asked, a lot of answers were given, and I want to share that perspective with you, especially if you weren't able to be in the room. So here's what we know. This isn't just another project coming through town. According to the figures shared at the State of the Economy presentation, this development is expected to more than triple the city's tax base. Pause on that for a second. Tripling the tax base doesn't just mean bigger numbers on a spreadsheet. It means more resources for infrastructure, better public services, more long-term stability for the city. It's a kind of shift that changes how a city grows for the next 10 to 20 years. In fact, Skybox's own Chief Development Officer, Haynes Strader, called what's happening across Texas the next iteration of the oil boom. And he was talking specifically about projects like ours, the people piece. But what really impacts the housing market is people. This project is expected to bring around 300 to 500 permanent jobs once it's up and running. The first building is targeted to be operational in late 2028. And during the construction phase, we're talking about 3,500 to 5,000 workers over a 5 to 7 year period. That's thousands of people who need a place to live, some temporarily, some permanently, but all of them adding to the pressure to a housing market that already has limited inventory. And that wasn't my opinion. That was clearly identified at the meeting as one of Wichita Falls' biggest current challenges, the housing supply. So when you combine limited supply with a sudden increase in demand, that's where markets start to move. So what is a data center? Now, before we talk about what that could look like here, let's take a step back and talk about the project itself.
Data facility coming to Wichita Falls will be developed by Skybox Data Centers.
Because one of the biggest things I hear from people is uncertainty. What exactly is a data center? Is it good for our city? What are the long-term impacts? And those are all fair questions. A data center is essentially the backbone of the digital world. Every time you stream a show, send an email, access medical records, or make an online purchase, the data is being stored, processed, and delivered through facilities like this. These facilities are what make up the cloud. PowerCampus Texas in particular is being built for AI and high-performance computing. This isn't heavy manufacturing. It's not loud, it's not disruptive, and it's actually considered one of the cleaner industries, especially when designed with modern systems. Now let's talk about water, because that's on everyone's mind. That brings me to one of the biggest concerns that people have brought up, the water usage. Let's talk about that clearly, because I want to give you the full picture, not just the part that sounds good. The data center is designed with a closed-loop cooling system. That means the water inside the cooling system is not constantly being consumed or evaporated. It circulates within the system in a continuous cycle. So instead of the kind of daily water demand you might be picturing, The day-to-day usage is primarily tied to normal building operations, restrooms, sinks, and everyday employee needs. The estimates shared were roughly 150,000 to 400 gallons of water per year per building for those standard uses. That equates to the water usage of a little more than 400 single-family homes per year. And that's also compared to what you'd expect from a large commercial facility with employees on site, not industrial scale daily consumption. Now, I want to be straight with you about one thing. A closed loop system isn't completely water free. When the system is first installed, it has to be filled. And that initial fill can be substantial. The Stargate data center in Abilene, for example, used about 8 million gallons of city water for its initial fill. That sounds like a lot, but for context, Abilene uses around 22 million gallons of water every single day. So the initial fill is a one-time event, not an ongoing daily demand. After that, the system just needs occasional top-offs and periodic maintenance. The takeaway? This isn't the kind of facility that drinks a city dry. But you deserve the full story, not just the headline. The Abilene case study. Now, let's connect this back to real estate, because this is where things start to hit closer to home, literally. We've already seen what can happen when a project like this enters a market that's similar to ours. So let's talk about Abilene. Abilene is home to the Stargate Data Center, a massive AI project backed by OpenAI, Oracle, and SoftBank. And here's the thing, Abilene already had a housing shortage before Stargate even started. According to the Abilene Housing Authority, the city was short about 5,600 housing units across rentals and home ownership. Then about 6,000 out-of-state construction workers were brought in to build the project quickly. And the housing market didn't wait years to react. As of February 2026, Zillow's data showed Abilene rents had jumped 33.9% year over year. The average rent climbed to around $1,758 a month, with some areas reaching as high as $2,395, up nearly $1,000 from the year before. To put that in perspective, during that same exact time, the national average rent only went up about 3.5%. Abilene's rent growth was nearly 10 times the national average. 10 times. Think about what that means. If you were renting in Abilene and your lease came up for renewal and your rent jumped by a third, that's a completely different financial situation overnight. And this is where I want to speak directly to renters for a moment, because this is one of those windows where timing matters more than anything else. When you own a home, especially with a fixed rate mortgage, your payment stays stable. When you rent, your payment is at the mercy of the market. And when demand spikes quickly, renters are usually the first to feel it. Now, I know the typical pushback, but it's more expensive to buy than rent. Nationally, that's true. Recent data from Redfin shows that you need about $111,000 in income to afford the typical home versus around $76,000 to afford the typical rental. That's a real gap. But here's the thing, that math gets flipped on its head when the local rents start jumping 30% in a single year. A renter paying $1,500 today could be facing a $2,000 rent at renewal. That's an extra $500 a month, $6,000 a year going to a landlord instead of building equity for you. So the question becomes, would you rather lock in your housing costs today or risk being part of that upward pressure later? Now for buyers, this creates a different kind of opportunity because markets don't move all at once, they move in phases. There's the early phase, where information is there but the majority haven't acted yet. Then there's the visible phase, where demand is obvious, competition increases, and prices start rising faster. And then there's the late phase, where people are reacting instead of planning. Right now, Wichita Falls is in that early phase. The project is announced. The investment is real. Skybox is already hiring locally. There are project managers and critical facilities technician roles posted right now. But the full housing impact hasn't hit yet. That's where opportunity lives. If you're buying, this is where you can still position yourself ahead of the increased demand. If you wait until everyone sees it, you're competing with everyone else. Now, let's talk to homeowners for a moment. Because if you're thinking about selling, this kind of shift can work in your favor, but timing and strategy matter. As demand increases, well-positioned homes tend to see stronger activity, more interest, and potentially better outcomes. But it's not just about waiting, it's about preparing. Understanding when you enter the market, how to position your home, and how to take advantage of the changing conditions. There's the bigger picture, because projects like this don't just bring direct jobs, they bring secondary growth, new businesses, expanded services, more activity across the entire community. You start to see restaurants, retail, service providers, and other industries grow alongside it. And that ripple effect is what sustains long-term housing demand, long after the construction crews move on. So when you look at all of this together, the investment, the jobs, the infrastructure, the housing shortage, and what we've seen happen in Abilene, it starts to paint a very clear picture. Now, nothing in real estate is ever guaranteed, and every market is different, but patterns matter. And when you see the same conditions lining up, it's worth paying attention. So the question really becomes, what do you want to do with that information? Do you want to wait and see what happens? Or do you want to take proactive steps and understand your options now while you still have flexibility? If you've been thinking about buying, selling, or even just trying to figure out how this could impact your situation, this is the time to have that conversation. Give me a call and let's schedule a consultation. We will look at your specific situation, your goals, and your timing, and build a strategy that makes sense for you. Because opportunities like this don't show up often. And when they do, the biggest advantage always goes to the people who act early. Hi, I'm Tim Lockhart with Keller Williams Realty and the Lockhart Real Estate team, here to serve your real estate needs in Wichita Falls and throughout North Texas.